Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Mr. Roli here with a tutorial on how to complete your vocabulary notebook, the first tutorial in our reading tutorials for social studies. Why I teach reading and social studies. I get this question all the time from students. Why is your class an ELA 2.0 class? It's social studies, it's supposed to be history. Well, when you study history, you have to read. A lot of what we know about history is in some kind of legible format. It's reading, so it's important to be a good reader. So reading just happens to be necessary activity for civilized human beings, especially when learning about civilized human beings. And it's why we have to learn how to read well. Hey, it's not the only reading or the only reason why. I mean, reading skills improve more than just your academic performance. Good reading skills help you to determine what is most important in a book, article, or contract, which is your basic life skills. You'll all have to sign contracts in the future. You will all have a home, hopefully, or even an apartment for a contract for some kind of property, okay, or a credit card contract. And you might want to really know what's in these things. It's really important to know. Trust me, I've learned the hard way sometimes. Good reading skills improve your memory and concentration. Therefore, they help you become a critical thinker, make good life decisions, resolve issues, and make good personal choices. And good reading skills make you more confident and more self reliant. You don't feel like you have to depend upon others because you've developed the skills to learn things on your own. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to do. The breakdown for reading skills. Like everything else in life, there's a strategy or a process we follow to read well. I call it the reading attack strategy. It's just how we go about it. So the first thing we have to do is attack the vocabulary. We got to recognize and understand the words you read. We all have to understand these words. So if you come across a term that you don't know, you got to figure out what that word means. So that's the first thing you want to do whenever you read something new, especially nonfiction text. Next, you want to attack the organization of the text. Understand how the text is organized makes it easier to read. Next, you attack the structure of each paragraph. Identify the topic of each paragraph. Determine the most important information to keep in that paragraph as you read along. And then finally, you want to look at the substance or essence of the reading. What is the overall point? Is there a deeper meaning beyond just its literal meaning? These are the reading skills we're going to use. And I will tell you about midweek when we're learning this, I will show you how they all work together. We're going to do them all together. Just keep that in mind. Okay, the one we're working on today, though, is just attack the vocabulary. So if you're sitting back going, there's no way I'm going to know all four of these things. Well, we're not doing all four at once. First thing we're going to do is go out to vocabulary. So let's begin. We do that with the vocabulary notebook, which you should have in front of you. And it kind of looks like a worksheet. It looks like a vocabulary self-collection. That's exactly what it is. It's a form of vocabulary self-collection, an inventory of important terms and words associated with a specific topic or unit. It helps you to use context clues to learn new words. It allows you to compare your definitions with the glossary definitions in the textbook. It helps you to know your vocabulary, and it's a great study tool. It's especially great because you can use it on a test or quiz. I let you have it as part of your open notebook strategy. It also builds reading independence. So all of these things are great. Now, the one that kind of catches people's eye all the time is the context clues. Let's look at how we're going to do this. So how do we use it? Scan the pages and copy down all bolded, highlighted terms. Well, I know what some of you are going to say right away. Mr. Rye, you've already done that for us. Yes, I did. I gave you all the bolded, highlighted terms. In fact, you'll notice as we go along, not only did I give you bolded, highlighted terms, sometimes I just took the bolded terms. There are some in the book. If you look on page 61, there's investigating. It's a bolded term. You'll notice it's not on the vocab notebook. What I did is I chose terms that were unusual, terms I didn't think a sixth grader would know, and I added those to it. So just keep in mind, sometimes they're not bolded and highlighted, they're just bolded. Now go back and use context clues to define the terms under my definitions for each bolded term. Context clues. You're not going to take a shot in the dark as to what the definition is. You're not going to pull it from the blue sky. You're not going to get creative and make it up. You're going to read the text and get an idea what the term means, and then write that definition down. That's a true context clue. Okay, so we'll show how that works in a second. Finally, look at the bottom of the page and get the book definition of the term. We'll talk more about that later. Draw a picture that will help you remember this vocabulary word. Drawing a picture, making an image of the term, infuses it in your brain, in a different part of your brain. So it's always a good idea to do that. You're exercising your brain. And I'll come back to that term of exercise and practice later. Now turn to page 60 in your textbook and let's begin the vocab notebook. So I'm on page 60, Roanoke and Jamestown. Turns out my first term is not until page 61. It's the bottom of the page. It's this term charter. So what's your context clue or my definition? I got to read it here. I'm going to read the last couple sentences. Several merchants pressed him for a charter, a document that granted the right to form a colony. Well, I don't know about you, but there's a hyphen after this term charter. And it says a document that granted the right to form a colony. I think a charter is a document that granted the right to form a colony. Not bad. I mean, there's almost a vocab term right in there. What is the actual definition? It's just below it. If you look, it's there. A document granting the recipient, the receiver, the right to settle a colony. It's almost the same. I'm going to take the piece of this that was a little different. Granting the recipient the right to settle a colony. The wording of it was a little different. I thought it was necessary to capture that wording. So I took that piece. I didn't say document again because I got that part. Granted. Okay. I document. I got it. But granting the recipient the right to settle, it was a little more clear. And that's why I wrote it. Next thing I'm going to do is draw a picture. Now, I could have drew a plane. I'm doing it like this because I'm doing it on a computer. But I would have just drawn a picture of a plane or a bus. And if you're going, why a plane or a bus, Mr. I? A chartered bus, a chartered plane. You have a contract. So it reminded me of that. Notice the drawing doesn't necessarily have to relate to the historical subject. It's okay, it doesn't. Whatever that word reminds you of, write it down. It's a way to exercise another part of your brain with the term, that visual part of your brain. That's why we do this. So, hey, there's charter. I'm moving on to joint stock company, which is at the top of page 62. And I'm going to read it and try to get an idea what it means. The Virginia Company was a joint stock company in which investors bought shares or part ownership. I feel like there's a definition there. I'm going to keep reading now. Investors bought shares hoping the company would make money and that they would share in the profits. That makes more sense. So, I just like the way that was worded. Investors buy shares, ownership in the company in order to share in the profits. And to me, that was pretty good. I'm actually getting that right out of the text, right out of the paragraph. Right? So what's the actual definition? It says a company in which investors buy stock in return for a share of its future profits. I got to be honest with you, I did copy that down completely. And the reason why, it was just a little more clear than my definition. It was a little more straight. Look, it's even shorter. Look at it. So, yeah, I kind of just copied a company which investors buy stock in return for a share of its profits. And when I thought of that, I immediately thought of a stock market. I could have made like an arrow on some kind of chart, and think how easy that is to draw. You can draw that yourself in no time. And there you go. There's our first two. And there's only two left, which means we're more than halfway through this. So if you feel you need to pause this and, review it, do so. That's why it's a video. You have control over it. It's beautiful. So, if you miss something or feel like you missed something here, go back and take a look at it. But we'll move on. Last two are Headright and Burgess. And you'll note those are on page 63 and they're quite close to one another. So let's see what this term headright means. The Virginia Company also began giving a headright or land grant of 50 acres to settlers who paid their own way to the colony. I don't know about you, but I'm reading a definition there. Seems like there's something there. It's a land grant of 50 acres for those who paid their own way to the colony. So I wrote that, a 50-acre land grant for those who paid their own way. And I got to be honest with you, that was so close to the actual definition. I think the word colonial settlers was used in the actual definition. On page 62 at the bottom, it says a 50-acre grant of land given to colonial settlers who paid their own way. It's almost exactly what I said. So I didn't cheat here, but I realized I almost said the exact same thing. 50-acre land grant who paid their own way, I'm going to get that, right? Same as text. I just write the same as text. It's almost exactly the same. And my picture was like a little certificate. You could draw a little square and fill it in with squiggly lines with a stamp on it with an X. That'll do the trick. And there's my picture. Hey, if the head right reminds you of something else, draw something else. It's okay. That your picture doesn't have to be my picture. Okay, so there's head right. How about this term Burgesses? Every time I see this word, I think of Burger King. Sorry, I do. I mean, I think somebody making burgers. So actually, it's the name of a county official in England. But yeah, that reminds me of somebody making burgers. Imagine somebody flipping burgers. So let's read it and see what it actually is. It says in 1619, land-owning male colonists cast ballots for burgesses or representatives. It does go on to explain what they do, but it's a representative. Yeah, I mean, I kept it simple here, right? And what is it? Where does it? Is the definition for a burgess? It's actually on the bottom of page 62 as well. Elected representative to an assembly. I actually did write that whole thing out. An elected representative to an assembly. And that is the bottom of page 62. In case you're wondering where that is, I didn't make it up. It's right there. It's the definition at the bottom. And my picture was like, and I could have drawn arrows to the guy that he was the person they voted for. That was my simple, you could do that with stick figures. It would look good. Hey man, if Burgesses remind you of somebody flipping burgers, draw a picture of a guy with a spatula flipping a burger. It's okay to do that here. Whatever visual reminds you of the term works for me. And it works for you. That's who it should really work for. So, hey, let's wrap this up. We only got 2 more slides. We're done. Okay, what are the tips here? What do you want to keep in mind? Complete your vocab notebook chapter by chapter or lesson by lesson as you read and summarize text. Always review it again before you move on to the next lesson or chapter. It's always a good idea. Go back and look at those terms. This is the one that's real important. Never skip a step in the process. It defeats the point of completing the vocab notebook. Following the process helps you to better relate to the term. I always have a few clowns who decide that they're just going to write a textbook definition for the definition for the text, and they're going to write the actual definition at the bottom of the page under my definition. There's always a couple clowns that do this. Don't do that. I start to notice it. I keep the textbook open when I'm grading these. I start to notice you did that. I can tell that you did not use what was in the actual textbook. You went right to the definition. Don't do that. That's like going to play the game before you ever practice. And practice without playing is wasted time. Good practice is really important. And my definition is the good practice. Don't skip it. Remember to put the picture in and check the rubric when you're all done. This is an easy 15-point grade if you'd like to know. It's worth 15 points. It's the easiest 15 points you can earn in my class. And completing this thing well, you can use it on the tests and quizzes. So why skip it? Make sure you stick with it. That takes care of vocab notebook. Our next activity is going to be a before reading activity. So we're going to continue to develop our specific reading strategies with nonfiction text. And what we want to do next time is understand the organization of the text, the scope and sequence of information in the text. To do that, you need to have a pre-reading or before reading strategy. You have to look ahead. Nonfiction text, you can always do that. You can look ahead at the text. So we're going to do that. We're going to take a look at it. I call this the reconnaissance or observation of the text structure. You want to figure out how it's structured. If you know how the author organizes the text, you can better understand what you are reading. And that's something you always got to keep in mind. Okay. Hey, excellent job. We're done with this one. I'll see you for the next one on before reading. And I hope you have a nice day. Thank you.